I've never seen the canvas as an amateur, as a pro, in sparring, in a fight, ever. I'm going to do it now? Nah, can't do it. Can't do it. So I lean back a little bit. I'm leaning into the ropes. And out of the corner of my eye, I see the ref like running over. And I'm like, this is what they wanted. No, I know this. I'm a businessman. I understand. They want him to take me out, right? So if he lands one more clean shot, this ref, and by all means, probably should stop the fight, right? I can't breathe. I'm jacked up. I'm hurting. I'm hanging on for dear life right now, and he's charging forward. He lands one more big shot. They're stopping this fight in the first round. So with everything that I had left in me, I'm ducking, dodging, weaving, and for the last 15, 20 seconds of the round, he didn't hit me with another shot, and that's how I got through it, and that's how the ref couldn't stop that fight. And I made it through.
You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
So we'll just get into it. For those who don't know, I'm here with Bill Hutchinson, Hutch, William, Sir Will.
Yeah, all of the
Sir
things.
Mix-a-lot.
All of the things.
And, pro fighter for 14 years, fighting for about 20, an attorney, all kinds of entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What better person to have on a show than someone who's just getting after it? So I appreciate you for jumping on, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So first is first, this is slowly turned into a fighter's podcast. As much as I like to keep it a general, like talking with just different forms of life, different walks of life. Everyone has a story, so the more type of people I can talk to, the better. I don't think I've had an attorney on here, so that's awesome. So, but it's cool because with that comes still training and fighting and pushing yourself, and I think that's a core value, and especially men, in today's world where people from different walks of life still find themselves fighting and training and that sort of, I feel like as men, we need that outlet. Definitely.
And to your point, the training and the fighting, you have a physical challenge, right? As an attorney or an entrepreneur or someone who is aggressive in the professional realm, it's an intellectual fight, right? So, it's just a different way in which to challenge yourself. It's just a different way in which to push yourself to see, what you're really capable of.
I just got to ask this. We were talking about a show it's become slowly my favorite. What type of attorney are you, if you don't mind me asking first off? That's going to determine the question.
Fair enough. So to answer your question, it's good. I know where you're going to go with this, right? I know he's about to talk about suits, but for sure, it's a common question. I get you.
Guilty.
Because the show's amazing. Let's just put that out there, right? The show's amazing, but it is nothing like real life.
Okay.
There's a whole lot more rules and regulations that go into that stuff. But in a certain sense, what's real about it is some of the gamesmanship from a business perspective, right? So in the courtroom, you're going to be very structured. You're going to have certain ways in which certain boundaries for sure, right? But in the business world, my goal with a lot of my clients, so I focus in the business corporate sphere. Most of my clients, if not all of my clients right now, are actual businesses, not individual folks. So what we do is we want to stay out of the courtroom, right? We want to try to make a deal. We want to try to come to an agreement. We want to try to make sure that we, right. Yeah. But it's true, right? Because the faster you can get back to doing what it is that you do, the better off you are. You don't want a 2-year legal battle by any means for any reason. Right, that's the last resort. That's the last thing you want. So it's most conducive 99% of the time as a business to make a deal, figure out how to get this put behind you as soon as possible, and get back to what it is you want to do, which is whatever business you're in. Get back to creating, get back to making products, services, whatever it is that you do.
That makes sense. And oftentimes we see, in the news, when a company settles, they're like, oh, they settled. Well, it's like, is that a win or a loss? Well, it depends on the goal of that company. If they want to, if they can dish out this, get it over with, and get back to what you said, doing what they're doing, that's a win for the company. It's a win for who they settled with.
Right. And on both ends, the cost of litigation is immense, right? I mean, it's a serious consideration. So for my clients, what we do is we do an analysis. What is the best case scenario if we go to court? What is the best case scenario if we make a deal now? Wins and losses, dollars and cents, right? We're in the business world. We're talking business. It comes down to dollars and cents a lot of times.
No, that's a good point. My question you answered without like how, because a lot of people, I'm a cop, right? A lot of people will be like, oh, like they watch these shows and like, why didn't you shoot the gun out of his hand? And it's like, dude, come on, like, what show are you watching? But so what got you into fighting? Was it something that you started early on, or was it something you kind of grew into the older you got?
So great question. So I think that from a young age, I was a very active kid, right? I was always out running around, out being crazy. And I think that my parents were looking for an outlet for me to exhaust some energy, and to tire me out, whatever the goal was, right? And coincidentally, I ended up in judo in a church basement, but it's funny because it just happened to be right next to my dad's favorite bar. Yeah. Right. So that was
you train and I'll train.
I never missed a practice. Okay. So he'd sit there and hang out and I'd be training, and it was convenient.
Judo's an interesting sport.
Yeah, it was fun, man. I really enjoyed it. And I did that for years and years, until I was about 12 or 13. And I told my dad, like, I want to take this to the next level. I want to throw hands. I want to fight. And, he took me to a Golden Gloves match, and I'm positive that he meant it as a deterrent, right? He really thought I would get in there and see some of these guys getting busted up and bleeding, and I'd be like, maybe that's not what I want. And it totally backfired because I was like, yup, this is exactly what I want to do. Thank you so much. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is for me. And so what he did then was there was the PAL gyms, the Police Athletic League gyms. There was one at that time right across from Langley High School in that little strip mall right there. And that's where I started. Day one, I walked into that gym, and there was a young kid around my age, around my weight, that was a Golden Gloves champion, and he was sparring, and they kind of threw me right into the fire like day one. And I sparred with that kid and held my own, and they were like, all right, we got something with this crazy little white kid, coming in here, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm sure that they were looking to bust me up, and they did. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I lit the world on fire from day one, but they knew that I was serious. They knew that I was tough. They knew that I wasn't going anywhere, and I was coming back for more. I showed up the next day, with a smile on my face, probably a black eye, just ready to go. So it was just for me.
That first day is make or break. Like, I feel, especially as a gym's perspective, right? Like with jiu-jitsu, we always say, like, don't trash the new people coming in, because that could be a deterrent for them of like, man, this sucked, I don't want to come in. But also, you don't want to let them just feel like, oh, this is easy. Like, why do we need this? I came in on my first day and trashed this purple belt or this blue belt, when in reality they were letting you get a feel for it. So it's a very sensitive entry.
I'm going to push back there. I'm going to go that it's two different things. If you are looking to train, if you are looking to train to get in shape, if you are looking to train to learn self-defense, if you are looking to train to any of the things outside of you want to fight, I think that I agree with you. And I think that there should be a segregation of how you treat people as it relates to what their goals are. If you tell me you're a fighter, or you want to be a fighter, or you think you're a fighter, I think you should be thrown to the wolves. And we're going to find out real quick if you are or you aren't. Because sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nail. And if you can't take being the nail, you're not a fighter. You're an athlete. It's a very big difference.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So did you go in there on your first day communicating like, I want to fight. That is my goal?
Yeah, I thought I was a badass, bro. I was this kid, he's the Golden Glove champ. Yeah, I'll go in there, and like totally ignorant, totally, out of my mind. But I wanted to fight. I love to fight. I like to fight. Like, you're not, if someone really enjoys fighting, that there's a possibility you could lose. right? To most people, that's a big deterrent, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get beat up,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but what if I just really like to fight? What if I like it, right?
Yeah, win, lose, or draw.
Win, lose, or
I'm
draw.
doing what I
I'm
like.
coming for you. You know, understand what I'm saying? I'm coming.
He's got the eyes.
Yeah, like you might even win. And I still had a good time.
And I won because
I got what I wanted.
No, that's an
I got what I
interesting point.
wanted. So, you know, you're not going to scare me by, you know, putting a fear in me that I might lose. I like to challenge myself. So that's not a deterrent for me.
So from that day, you were sold.
I was sold.
And how did you? We'll get into all the deep stuff, but you know, 20 years that's a long career for fighting. What kept you
23.
eating?
Damn, I'm getting old.
23 years.
23. I'm 36 years old. 13 years old. That's 23.
Still doing this.
I'm not a mathematician, but
Hey, 1 +
Get the
1 =
calculator
2.
out.
Yeah, someone will check us in the
Yeah,
comments.
right.
I'm sure. So what? How do you fuel that fire? That's still because like even talking about it now, your eyes are like,
oh, I'm getting amped up.
yeah, like
I'm getting amped
and
up.
I love when I see that because the whole premise of this podcast is to talk with people who have passions. Right? I don't care if the passion is basket weaving. If you talk to me like that about basket weaving, I'm going to listen to what you have to say because you have found something in what you love doing. You found something that just fucking fuels you.
Yeah.
And if I can pull from that, I'm going to take it. I'm a taker. Like I tell, like people are like, oh man, like people message me all the time, man, dude, your platform, which is, it's growing. It's little, it's growing. Your platform, it's like I'm doing this for people, but I'm also doing this for myself. Like I can pull from everyone's story. So like that passion, that flicker in the eyes, I'm gonna try and take as much as I can from that because then it could benefit me,
Yeah, definitely.
as well, and benefit everyone else listening. Like if people listening can pull from your story and everyone else's story, and look, I'm excited. I'm throwing spit across the table.
Let's go.
So what fuels that 20 years of fighting?
So a lot of things. Consistency, discipline, all of that I would say are probably the fuel of what allows you to do that, right? But inside what that is a constant desire to be better, a constant fuel to challenge myself. I think that how that stays there is the constant pursuit of improvement, to be a little bit better every day. I know that that's kind of cheesy, but you know, it's a real thing when you think about, okay, I have these big goals, but how do I achieve that tomorrow? Well, tomorrow, that means getting up early, hitting the gym, eating the right things, you know, not destroying my body with alcohol or different things like that. So it's a challenge to stay disciplined to what you really want. And that is constant self-improvement for me.
And do you think fighting, boxing, all the stuff you do, the training, does that translate into your professional career as well in being an attorney in your entrepreneur mind?
Absolutely. And so this kind of all weaves in together for me personally, because it's hard to say for most people that fighting is very healthy for me. Okay, people don't understand that because it doesn't make sense, right? Common sense tells you that fighting is unhealthy for me because of blows to the head, because of the training and the physical tolls that it puts on my body. But believe you me, fighting is one of the healthiest things that I have because it keeps me disciplined. It keeps me in the gym. It keeps me focused on my diet. It keeps me out of the bars and out of partying and doing different things like that. You know, it's a fuel to do the right thing, right? And when I'm doing the right things outside the ring, I'm doing the right things inside the ring, and then in turn, I'm doing the right things outside the ring again because I'm being disciplined, I'm being on point, I'm clear-minded, you know, I'm doing all the right things, and that translates to good business, that translates to good leadership, that translates to all of the good things for the professional aspect of my life.
I truly believe that. Like a lot of the CEOs and successful attorneys and business owners, they have some sort of, you know, they're in the gym or they're training some sort of martial arts, and like it always leads to something physical. They're doing something physical outside that keeps them disciplined in their arena of whatever they're pursuing.
Well, and you have to have an outlet, right? You know, you have to have some way to let that stress out, that frustration out. We all have bad days. We all have situations that we're not happy about. We all have examples every single day of ways in which we wouldn't or we would have liked to see things go another way. And that's across the board for everybody. So how do you let that out? How do you get that out in a healthy way? And I think that's important. It's important for me for sure, and I'm sure that it's important for others.
Yeah, healthy outlet is key, because oftentimes we see like these videos online of people just losing their shit. Like, they oftentimes don't train. There's no healthy outlet. Like, if you're stressed, okay, when you're in court, and I've done this too, like, and you have that attorney, no offense,
assholes,
who's like, and you know, they have a job to do, and as a cop, I understand that, and they're trying to discredit you as a person, and they're not doing that to bash you. They're doing that to win for their client. Like, when you're in court, you have to approach it as a game. Like, they have a goal and you have a goal. So they're trying to discredit you, and then we take that personally, right? And when we take that personally, what do? We get angry or upset. And oftentimes that manifests physically, right? You want to punch this dude, or you want to yell at them because you can't hit. Like, it starts to manifest in a negative way.
Then I won.
Right? Well, exactly.
Right.
So you can't allow that to show. So how do you create that outlet? You don't fucking lose it on this person. You maintain your mind, you maintain your discipline, you speak your facts, and then after you go to the gym and you let it out. But if you don't have that outlet, how do people let it out? That's where we see alcoholism or drugs or erratic behavior, because they can't let it out in courts, or they can't let it out on their boss, and they can't let it out on whoever they're having that friction with, and then we outlet it to something negative.
Oh, 100%. And I think that it's interesting because as an attorney, it's one of the most can be one of the most stressful professions out there. I know from personal experience, literally before I graduated law school, they made us, it was a mandatory course about controlling drugs and alcohol, substance abuse. The statistics for attorneys that turn to substances or turn to alcoholism is astronomical. And I can only imagine that someone in your field, you know, as a police officer, you know, you're arguably more stressful than an attorney. You know, you're dealing with this in the moment, you know, some of the violence, some of the terrible things that I'm sure that a lot of you or your coworkers have seen. You know, I can only imagine those same triggers and those same stresses. You know, it's easy to take that, you know, the shortcut to drugs or alcohol to numb that, or to try to forget about that, or whatever that looks like for the individual person. And, you know, through that course that we were required to take to graduate, it was eye-opening to me, because you think about lawyers, you think about doctors, you think about professionals, and you never would think, like, you don't immediately associate them with a drug addict, right? You think about the guy laying in the street, or you think about the homeless guy, or the guy, you know, down on his luck, that are struggling with these things. But everyone struggles with these things. It's something that you either have control of or you don't. And so it was eye-opening for me to see, from a statistical standpoint, the amount of people, you know, very professional people that were having real problems. I guess just my pure ignorance thought that, you know, oh, these successful people don't have these kind of problems, right? So it was a very eye-opening experience for me, for sure. Well, so I guess it worked. So congratulations to the University of Pittsburgh Law School. The course worked.
And that's a good course to take, and I think cops should take that too, because we don't think it'll ever affect us. And then you read these stories of, you know, cops who fall into alcoholism and cops who fall into, you know, abusing prescription medication. It's like, that's a drug. It's
For
prescribed. Sure. But now instead of taking your prescribed amount, you need to damp that pain some more, or that back, or whatever it is, and you take 2 instead of 1. And next thing you know, you're dealing with stuff that it's gotten out of hand. But like, we're all human, and we all fall short. So it's like, how do we deal with that?
Well, and to your point, that's how it starts, right? I mean, when I was, you know, I'm 36 now. When I was coming up through high school, especially, that's when like opioids were like insane. Like, it was so normal to see like high school kids popping Oxycontin.
Yeah.
Then it's just like, it's crazy to say that out loud, but that was like almost normal. You know, I have two very close friends of mine that are dead right now because of opioids. And so, you know, you think that, you know, it was like a clean thing to do. No one saw you smoking a joint, or no one was like openly saw you doing anything that some of these other drugs require. You just pop a quick pill, you're partying along. No, it was like, it was almost like like a designer drug, right? It was like, you know, okay in some aspects. You know, it was clean, and it ruined a lot of lives because sooner or later you can't afford that stuff. Okay, you understand how expensive those pills are on the street, you know, and then every single one of those end up turning to heroin. It's a whole lot cheaper, right?
Yeah. And you can get it anywhere.
Exactly, and it's the same high. Okay, so you know, all those guys that were in this kind of like clean, bougie space, that's where they head. That's where they go.
Yeah, I grew up humble beginnings, and I like grew up surrounded by all this stuff, right? And then I get into an all honors high school, which you had to apply to get into, and I'm surrounded by a lot of affluent families and affluent people. Mm-hmm. But then what I learned when I was going to these, you know, these gatherings, these house parties, they're all doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no one is safe from this. Like, I always thought, like, oh, it's my environment. I got to get out of my environment. And then you put yourself in another environment, and it's like different crowd, same issues, just different problems, right? Like in the inner city, we don't have money, we don't have resources, so we don't have entertainment, so we resort to this. And then I put myself in an environment that has money, that has resources, that has entertainment, but they also have similar issues.
Yeah.
Combated by different things that brought it on. So it's interesting how like no one is safe.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And it's funny, you know, the old adage, more money, more problems, right? But when you can
shout out, didn't
right. But when you can afford some of these temptations, right? And you can, you know, it creates a whole nother problem and a whole new problem, because now then the problem shifts to no one's saying no to you anymore, right?
I heard a saying, "Hustle like a crackhead." And I was
That's
like,
so true.
I was like, what do you mean? Like I almost looked at them, and they're like, dude, think about it. They find their way, even though they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So like if you hustle like that in a positive way, you know, you push to what you want and you find a way to make it happen. Yeah. Like they're not saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna get my fix today." No, they find a way.
Exactly. The crackhead didn't wake up like, I'm a little tired today.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go do what I got to do to get my fix today. No, he did. He did.
Hustle like a crackhead. That's gonna be it. I'm sure I'm gonna get shit for that. So let's reflect on one of your most, well, I don't know. I'll ask. What's one of your most memorable fights? You had 23 years of doing this career. It's taken you all over the world, all over the country. What's one of the fights, as soon as I asked that question, that you were like, boom, did something pop up in your mind? Or
the short answer is not necessarily. There's a million different experiences that I've had that have been amazing. That, you know, I could talk your ear off about this for days. The correct answer, and the answer that everybody's going to want to hear, is my most recent fight. I fought Adrien Broner, who's, you know, 4-time world champion, probably Hall of Famer. I would assume he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He certainly has the resume for it. And so from that experience, certainly memorable because, number one, anytime you're sharing a ring with someone of that caliber, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn a lot about the level that you're at. You're going to learn a lot about what you're capable of, and in turn, what you need to work on. So that was a phenomenal experience for me, because I essentially got my PhD in fighting overnight, right? Like, you know, all of the culmination of all of the years of work and kind of putting that to the test, and the trials and tribulations that I went through in that fight, I'm so much better for it. And moving forward in my career, you know, we still got a few fights left, and you're going to see a much improved fighter out of me, because I think that it just took my IQ to a whole new level. And in that fight, a lot of people don't realize in these fights, you're essentially playing chess, right? There's so much mental game that's going on. And one of the things that I really learned in that fight was I had to pick up the speed with which I was playing chess, right? Towards the end of that fight, I felt really comfortable about what I had learned about him in the ring, his timing, speed, all of those things I felt really good about. I needed to do that a whole lot sooner and a whole lot quicker, right? So it was me kind of saying, okay, I actually downloaded and processed this information correctly, okay? Now I need to do that at a much faster rate, and I can be in there with anybody in the world and compete, and on any given day I can win. And that's just a fact. With the best fighters in the world, with world-class fighters, I belong at that level. And that's what you're going to see proof of in any of my fights moving forward.
That I feel like that is the best way to describe, especially boxing, right? Like, boxing is violent. Boxing is, when you look at statistics, you have a higher chance of developing, the CTE and everything with boxing than you do with MMA. But in MMA, you see these gruesome knockouts, right? But with boxing, everything's targeted. Mm-hmm. When I see a high-level boxer versus someone starting in boxing, it's night and day. Mm-hmm. And like, you see a high-level MMA fighter and a boxer, the striking, night and day.
Yeah.
Like, boxing is so niche, and just from the slips and the movement, the feet work, it's I love watching boxing because it's almost like, and this is not meant to be disrespect, it's like a ballet dance. Mm-hmm. It's
very much an art
with punches. Yeah. Like, it blows my mind. How did that fight come to be? Like, how did that fight come to be? And then what was your attitude leading up to that fight?
So interestingly enough, years ago, I promoted my own fights here in Pittsburgh. And so during that time, on one of our cards, we had dealings with Don King Promotions, and we had some of their fighters on our undercard. Amir Imam, who was a gold medalist. There was another gentleman, cruiserweight. His name's escaping me now, but he was a world champion, a version of a world champion at cruiserweight. So we had some like high-level fighters on our local undercards here in Pittsburgh under the Don King banner. And so when I saw that Adrien Broner signed to Don King, I immediately texted my coaches and my team, and I said, we're going to get this fight. I called that months before anything even came of it. And so, they said, well, what do you want to do about it? And I said, contact all of our old contacts, the matchmakers, the gentlemen that were actually setting up those fights for our prior shows years ago, and just let them know that I'm available. I'm here. When Adrien Broner is looking for an opponent, I'll be ready. Just put it out there, right? And sure enough, a couple months later, they called me and they said, we've got a date in Miami against Adrien Broner. Would you take it? Absolutely. Absolutely. The answer is yes. We didn't even talk about money. We didn't even talk about the deals or the details of the deal. We didn't talk about anything. I just said yes. I just kept saying yes, one word. Yes. Yes. I want this fight. I want this fight. And that's how it came about. It was that easy. I was that easy.
What did taking this fight mean for you?
Well, first and foremost, it meant an opportunity to compete at the highest level, which I always want to do. We talked a little earlier about testing myself. We talked a little earlier about, putting myself in positions to see what I'm capable of and where I'm at. And if I'm sitting here telling you that I'm a fighter, and I'm sitting here telling you that I love this, and I'm sitting here telling you that I'm that good, why would I not take advantage of this opportunity, right? And what's most interesting about this is I've been campaigning years before that at 135 pounds, which is lightweight in boxing. This fight was at welterweights, 2 divisions up. And again, that was another thing. Yes, don't care. Yes, I want this. Okay, I want to see where I'm at. I want to test myself. I know I can compete. I know I can. And listen, I'm not ignorant. This was very much a tune-up fight for him, right? They absolutely thought that they were going to bring me in. He was going to wipe the floor with me in the first round and get me out of there and move on to a big fight. That's what's supposed to happen there, right? Like, that's how this was supposed to go. And I can even remember they flew me and my wife out to Las Vegas for the Ryan Garcia and Tank fight, and we did a press conference out there. And I remember talking to some of the crew at Don King, their attorneys and different matchmakers and stuff. And I'll never forget, one of the gentlemen leaned over, and I don't know if he knew I could hear him or not, but he's like, this kid really thinks he's going to win. Like, it was a joke. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I fully believed I was going to win that fight. I was absolutely there to win. I was absolutely there to do everything I could to put on a show. And that's what we saw. I mean, and all of that to say, it almost went exactly how they wanted, right? I got hit with a body shot in the first round that was like decapitating. I've never been hit with anything like that in my life. And I'm just like, here we go. Like, you have all the self-doubt, all of the things going through your head. I had like a 10-minute conversation with myself in about 10 seconds. I got hit with the shot, and the first thing you think of is like self-preservation, right? Okay, take a knee. You can get your 8 seconds. He'll get off me for a little bit. Let me catch my breath. And I took a step back with full intentions of taking a knee. And right before I was about to bow my leg, I'm like, oh, fuck that. Okay? Fuck that. I've never been down in my life. I've never seen the canvas as an amateur, as a pro, in sparring, in a fight, ever. I'm gonna do it now? Nah, can't do it. So I lean back a little bit. I'm leaning into the ropes. And out of the corner of my eye, I see the ref like running over. And I'm like, this is what they wanted. No, I know this. I'm a businessman. I understand. They want him to take me out, right? So if he lands one more clean shot, this ref, and by all means, probably should stop the fight, right? I can't breathe. I'm jacked up. I'm hurting. I'm hanging on for dear life right now, and he's charging forward. He lands one more big shot. They're stopping this fight in the first round. So with everything that I had left in me, I'm ducking, dodging, weaving, and for the last 15, 20 seconds of the round, he didn't hit me with another shot, and that's how I got through it, and that's how the ref couldn't stop that fight. And I made it through, right? And then we ended up finishing that fight, and about halfway through that fight, I started being able to breathe again, which was nice. It helps. About the fourth or fifth round.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. I had to survive there for quite a while. But about the fourth or fifth round, I started like, okay, I'm actually back. Right, I have my faculties about myself. I can breathe again, and I finished that fight strong. Especially if you watch that fight without the audio on. The announcers were little biased and were talking a little crazy, to be frank. But if you watch that fight on mute, or you watch like the ringside footage of that fight, I think you'd find a very, very entertaining fight, a very good fight, and the entire Broner team said as much after the fight. They came into the locker room, and his trainer, Kevin Cunningham, had a lot of good things to say about me and our team, and the fight that we were able to put on for the fans. And it was an honor to kind of hear that from him and their team. And inevitably, the entire Broner team was unbelievably respectful. I know that he's known for his antics, but truth be told, I think a lot of that's a character, and at least to me, he was very respectful, and his team was the same.
So you were expected to not make it past the first round, and you knew that coming in there.
Yeah.
So did that play a role in your psyche, or was that something you took in, you appreciated?
Remember, I'm crazy, bro. That's what they thought, right? And I understood that my belief in myself and my understanding and knowledge within myself that I could win that fight, I understood that they saw that as delusional, right? But you'd be delusional not to think that I really believed in myself, because I did, and I still do.
I think it's delusional to, especially at this level, right? Like you have many fights. Your record speaks for itself. It's almost delusional to be like, this dude believes in himself. Why would he not? Like, what? Right. Especially in the fighting world, when someone's like, this dude's crazy to think he could win. Why would he step in this ring if he didn't, or in this cage if he didn't think he had a chance? Like, why would someone do that?
Well, a lot of people, and so I actually have, to your point, sometimes it could be for a paycheck, right? And, some fighters will say, well, for my family, or for my financial situation, whatever it may be, maybe there's a fighter out there that took a fight just to get paid and felt they didn't have a good chance of winning. Maybe that's possible for somebody out there. But I can tell you that wasn't the case for me. In fact, they even brought that up at one of the press conferences. They said, I'm sure this is the biggest paycheck or fight purse of your career. Is that the motivating factor for taking this fight? And I said, honestly, I could probably make more outside of the ring for the time that I have invested in the camp and everything else for this fight. If it was about money, brother, I'm making a big mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
especially
really,
given the things you're doing, it's
right,
like, I could find another way to make a dollar.
I could, especially without getting blows to the head, like I could figure it out. Okay. Like, if I really didn't love this, if this wasn't what it was all about for me, it certainly wasn't about the money. I can promise you that, so
it's a bonus.
That was just extra. That's the icing on the top, and then listen, the purse was fine. Okay. I'm not complaining about that. But what I'm saying is that, it truly had nothing to do with my decision to take that fight.
Well, especially when you love doing this, to be able to compete with someone like that, like that's an honor in and of itself. Like the money's cool. And I tell people, when you do things for the right reason and you enjoy it, the money's going to come. If you stick with it long enough, the money's going to come. Mm-hmm. Like it's inevitable. Well, so especially in this the stage you're on.
Yeah, and like we've talked about numerous times, I really love to fight. I really enjoy it, and I'm going to do it for as long as my body allows me to, and for as long as it makes sense as it relates to the blows to the head, because I do keep track of that. I'm not ignorant to the fact that CTE is a real thing, and I don't want to be one of those guys suffering, in the second half of my life. But with that said, I would also be ignorant to not understand the business side effects of fighting, right? Fighting for me is an unbelievable cultivator of business, right? It's a great marketing tool. People pay attention. People know who I am because of my fighting career. I've done a lot of business outside of the ring because of fighting. It's just a fact. It certainly wasn't why I got into it. It's certainly not why I stay in it, right? I can find other ways to market myself and promote myself, that don't include getting punched in the face, I promise. But I also can't ignore that it's good for business.
Business is good.
Business is good.
What did this loss mean for you? I know you mentioned that people kind of already gave you this loss, but for you, you went in there, gave everything, and it didn't go your way. What did that mean for you, and how did you come back from that, or how are you coming back? Because this was your last fight.
It was tough. It was especially tough instantly. The taste is in your mouth, right? You start quickly analyzing all the things you could have done differently. Could I have prepared any differently? You start just going down a checklist of like what went wrong. How could I have rectified this situation? And analyzing the fight over and over and over in your head. What could I have done? How could I have done it? What if I did this at, the first minute of the seventh round? You go through all of those things. But for me, I quickly understood exactly what I said earlier. I need to, one, process the information in the fight at the highest level a little bit quicker, right? I already had like a checklist. I already had like my own to-do list, right? So I quickly got over the loss because I said, now I have a list of tangible things in my mind I can work on to compete at this level, to win at this level. So I quickly shifted from, oh, poor woe is me, to here's my action plan, okay? I like to tell a lot of people that work with me, I apologize for the people listening. They're probably going to hate hearing this because I tell it all the time, is like, I don't want you to come to me with problems. Come to me with a solution, okay? We're going to talk about the problem, but it's going to be quick, okay? We're going to talk about it because we have to, and then I want to instantly start talking about the solution, okay? That's way more important. Let's get to work on solutions now, okay? So I did the same thing for myself. As soon as I call it 24 hours. I had a little pity party for myself for about 24 hours, if that. And then I said, okay, I know how to fix these problems. I know how to start working on some of these shortcomings. Let's get to work.
What advice do you give especially to young fighters who experience a loss. We were talking earlier, a good friend of mine, Devin Siegfried, went into a fight 4-0, 4 knockouts, finally got his belt shot, which prior to that, he had an opportunity and the fight fell through. Now he's got this stage, he's got this opportunity, and then some shit happens that it doesn't go his way, And then I also had another fighter out of our gym, my MMA gym. He goes in, belt opportunity, phenomenal wrestler, phenomenal fighter, doesn't go his way. So now I'm talking to these two dudes on 2 different days, and I'm telling them this, and I'm trying to explain to them, like, hey, a loss is only a failure if you don't diagnose why you lost and then approach it in a systematic way. Like, okay, now you know what you need to do. You rather have this loss sooner than later so you can reevaluate and get after it. If this happens at the pinnacle of your career, the end of your career there, and then you end with this, it's going to eat you up. You'd rather have this sooner than later. So I'm trying to explain this to them. And I'm not the best speaker, but I appreciate that. That's exactly the message I'm trying to convey. So what advice do you have for especially young and up and coming fighters who go through these feelings like immediately?
So, good question. I'm glad you asked it. And it's interesting. I just had this conversation with a little cousin of mine, Cameron. He's a high school wrestler, took a loss, and we had a long conversation about this. And I'm going to tell you the exact same thing I told him. Understand first and foremost, 100%, it's your fault. It's your fault. Your friend Devin, it's his fault he got knocked out. It's not his trainer's fault. It's not his strength and conditioning coach's fault. He didn't have a bad weight cut. His wife or significant other didn't keep him up late the night before. It's nobody's fault but his own, okay? It is his fault that he didn't win. With that comes a lot of power, okay? Because it's his fault that it happened, and it's also his fault to fix it. It's also his responsibility to fix it, all right? He has the power now to change the direction of what's next, okay? So as long as he completely understands that it's his responsibility, it's a one-on-one sport, all of the shortcomings that came through that fight, he knows, and he needs to start making his list, just like I did, about how can he move forward, right? What does he have to do? What happened? What shot did he get hit with? Why was he in that position? Why didn't he recognize the setup, or whatever the case may be for that situation? He needs to take ownership and responsibility for the loss, and then he needs to take ownership and responsibility for the solution. And he needs to take steps forward every day to make sure that doesn't happen again.
It's the concept of extreme ownership.
100%.
Oh man, dude, I'm glad we went into this. I can go a whole episode on that because I try to tell people, like, no matter what happened, if it's your fault, if you make it your fault, if you diagnose what you did to contribute to that result,
yeah,
you're taking all your chips. Now you can play them. If you throw the responsibility to the circumstances, the ref, this fighter did dirty, this, you're putting your chips on the table. And everyone knows if you play games, if you gamble or whatever, once your chips on the table, you can't be like, well, never mind, you can't take it back. Yeah. So you're putting all the responsibility on someone else, things you can't control.
Yeah, and it's so common in the fight game for the shift of blame, or nobody wants to say, I lost, or I wasn't good enough on the night. No, for whatever reason, that's hard to come by. And I'm so sick of having conversations with other athletes or other fighters, that come to me with the excuses and stop, just stop. It's your fault. It's your fault. You got to know that. And then we can start the process of moving forward. It's like we talked about before, the problem and the solution. We still have to talk about the problem quickly before we start talking about the solutions. We can't even start talking about solutions until you understand it was your fault to begin with. Then we can start along the process of fixing it. If we don't understand what the problem is, how can we fix it, right? So it's understanding and admitting what the problem is to start working on it. So, and with that is your true understanding of and awareness of yourself. For instance, we talked about in my fight, I told you that when I was leaning up against the ropes, even though I didn't take a knee, if I would have just took a knee and stayed down, everybody would have known that I quit, okay? But I also could have quit multiple other times in that fight. When I lean back into that ropes and I see that ref coming over, There's my saving grace right there. All I got to do is get hit one more time, and I know that fight's over. I'm saved, right? I didn't quit. No one could quit. No one can say that I'm a bitch. No one can say that I gave up. And then I could run over to the ref and say, why'd you stop it? And put on a little charade and act tough. But I'd know in my heart, I'd know I was a quitter, right? I saw that ref coming, and I had my out. I could have got out of that fight if I wanted to. And many other times, but that's one perfect example of when I could have just got out. I didn't want to be out. I wanted to keep fighting. I wanted to find anything left that I had. I wasn't done yet. I wasn't dead yet, okay? I wanted to still go, okay? But I had an out, and I didn't take it.
Fuck. People listen, and I'll say this to people. If you're taking offense to this, if you're like, oh, it's probably applicable.
Then I'm talking about you.
Yeah, it's probably applicable because I'll find myself, especially in jiu-jitsu, I'm tired. I'm gassed. I'm in a position that I can probably get out of this, but it's going to require more effort. A lot of times, especially in training, right? There's no medal to this. There's no record to this. Like, oftentimes, most people will tap and we'll reset and we'll do it again. But you're not pushing that. You're not pushing yourself to the next level. There was a study. There's a lot of studies coming out. Some sort of cortex that gets developed in your brain when you start doing things you don't want to do. When you start doing hard things. When you tell yourself, oh, I'd rather stay in than go to the gym. And then you go to the gym anyway. When you start doing that stuff, you build this, and of course the name is escaping me now. You start building this thing in your brain, and studies show during scans that this area starts to get bigger the more times you do hard things. And we've always heard this in motivational books and speakers, do the hard stuff, do the things you don't want to do. That's what builds discipline. Now there's studies coming out that show there's this reaction in your brain that starts to grow. And when you start taking the easy route, start doing the things that you want to do, instead of doing the things you don't want to do, it starts to shrink. I just want to take a second to shout out a few companies who believed in me. These were one of our first official sponsors, so huge shout out. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Carbo Jewelers, established in 1997 on the values of honesty and integrity. Whether you're searching for the perfect piece, need expert repair services, visit Carbo Jewelers in Newark's Ironbound District, where your jewelry is always in safe hands. This episode is also brought to you by Continental Jewelers, proudly serving Hudson County, New Jersey since 1964. Whether you're seeking a timeless piece or need expert repairs, they've got you covered. Visit Continental Jewelers, your trusted source for all things jewelry. You can find them on Instagram at Carbo Jewelers or online at carbojewelers.com. Lastly, big shout out to Carbo Trading. Besides coins, precious metals, and jewelry, if it could be traded and collected, he's probably got it. They can be found on Instagram at carbo.trading. You can find all of our sponsors out online on our sponsor page at therelentlessproject.com.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's evidence, it's scientific evidence that backs up and proves the things that go-hards have known our whole life. Right? Like, some people say, well, why is he successful? Or why is this? Why is that? Now we actually have evidence to prove and to show people why the successful people are successful, why the guys have made it, why the champions are champions, right? In any walk of life, whether it be business, whether it be sport, whatever the case may be. It's scientific evidence that say, okay, here's why he's so successful.
And it's funny when we look at the top 1% of people in anything that we want to do, right? Like, let's take entrepreneurs. We're like, oh, 1% owns the majority of everything. And it's like, why? When you start to digest their habits, and they're doing the little mundane things that we don't want to do. Like, there was this huge dude in the gym that I used to go to, and when he was done with his set, he would start rearranging the dumbbells. Like, if it's 5, 10, 15, 20, if it was 5, 15, 10, like, you would see him like start rearranging it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's weird. Like, that's not your job, but cool flex. And like, someone would leave a napkin on a bench, he'd grab it, throw it away. Like, he was doing these little things, right? And I never talked to him. But then years later, I read a book, and the dude was talking about, like, do the little things. When you're in the gym, I'm like, holy fuck.
Yep.
It translates, because now you're doing these little things that no one else is doing, which is building this thing in your brain. It's building this pattern, this behavior that I'm willing to do the things other people aren't. And when you stack those little things together over a course of years, you start to build this thing that puts you far ahead than anyone. I was reading another book where he was talking about, like, you know, when you go into a bathroom and you use a bathroom as men, we stand. Most men. No dick.
All men. All men.
That's an inside joke.
Trump's president again. It's all men stand again.
All men stand to pee. So, you know, sometimes we get some blowback on a seat. If you just leave it there and you go,
if my wife's listening, I don't. Okay, by the way, no blowback for me. I'm a straight shooter the whole time, every time.
Straight. You should know where your target. You should know your target at all times.
That's right. That's right.
By not cleaning up that seat, that says a lot about you as a person, right? That's not your property. That's not your thing. You're disrespecting this, and you're not setting it up for the next person, right? Let's say it's a shared bathroom. Some woman or some child's going to go in there and sit, and now all your stuff's all over the seat. That speaks volumes on you. You know, and he said, you know, I'm the type, in this book, he said, I'm the type of person, when I go in there, I didn't make that mess. I'm not responsible for that mess, but I am. I take ownership of it, because when I leave and the next person comes in, they're going to attribute that to me. And that's that. Now they're going to have a perception of me. He's like, so what? He'll clean the fucking seat after he's done, even though it wasn't his. And that's what this dude was doing in the gym. He didn't mess up the order. He's probably the dude who he picks up his weight from this location, he puts it back in this location. Mm. You know, and he was talking about this, and this is I want to say it was a Jocko book.
Sounds like
extreme ownership. Yeah. I'm, you know, you take it with a grain of salt. But he was talking about this, and I'm like, dude, it goes to the principle of doing the little things that other people aren't. And then that translates into your business, your professional career, your fighting career. Like when you're training, you know, you have 30 more seconds in your round. Are you going to go against the ropes and just be like, I got 30 seconds, or are you going to go, no, I got 30 seconds. Let me do the most I can with this 30 seconds and get those extra punches in, or that extra attempt in, like, or that takedown in. Like, are you doing the extra, or are you just stepping back?
For sure. It's the attention to the details, right? Even the small ones. And on a grand scale, if you're looking at, you know, everybody that goes to the gym, right? It's a lot of people. A lot of slobs go
Especially
to the gym too, right? And then you start weaning it down. Okay, how many are there for the whole hour? Okay, how many are there for an hour and 15 minutes? Okay, how many people do that extra set? Okay, how many people do that extra rep? And then you just start bringing that scale down until eventually you get to that 1% that you talked about earlier, right? The people that pay attention to every little detail, they do everything that's required and then some. And that's the separation, especially slowly over time, it adds up into the favor of the 1%er, and eventually you get down to that point.
Fuck yeah. That's all I can say to that. So you talked about diagnosing this last fight to prep you for going forward. What's next for you? I hear you have something in the works.
Yeah, so it's actually very, very exciting. What it is it's a multi-event and a multi-year deal that I did with Highmark Stadium. Highmark has that stadium on the south side where the Riverhounds play. They also have a venue in Coriopolis, the Montour Sportsplex, for the indoor where the Riverhounds practice. So two great venues for events and for combat sports events, both indoor and outdoor. And what we wanted to do, and kind of the setup for the agreement and the joint venture that I have going on with them, is to bring championship caliber boxing back to Pittsburgh, put on great events, and have a schedule of sorts for people that it's going to be consistent throughout the year. And Highmark Stadium was very interested and intrigued and very much wanted to become a hub and a facilitator and a platform for combat sports. So I kind of implemented myself to, one, bring awareness to their goals, and two, make sure that we facilitate those kind of events that are up to their standards. So that's how we got that done. And the first event on our calendar, per se, is March 1st. So we got about a little under 5 weeks, and we will be in the indoor venue, the Montour Sportsplex. And I'm very, very excited about this first event, not only because it's kicking off what's going to be a great relationship and a great recurring theme of events, if you will. But I'm excited to get back in the ring, right? Like,
So you're on the card.
I'm on the card. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be fighting on the card, and I'm anxious. I'm anxious to get back in there. I'm anxious to get back in front of Pittsburgh, right? It's been a few years now, and I'm excited not only to show everybody what I've been working on and the skills that I have and that I've been sharpening, but even for myself, mostly for myself. I need to get back to combat, brother. I need to get back in there. I got a lot to let out. It's been a while.
Pity the fools across from you. So I heard a rumor that Savage Gentleman is making his way back in the boxing on this event.
He is. Me and Shane or the Savage. I don't know how he goes.
He goes with Savage Gentleman, Victor Benjamin, SVJB.
He's all of the things. He got more names than me.
Yeah, dude. So I actually heard about this before our introduction.
Okay.
So it was on my calendar. It popped up on Instagram somewhere. I forget where. I put it on my calendar.
Nice.
And then Shane hits me up. He's like, "Hey, dude, I'm making my comeback to boxing on this event." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like, that's dope. I already have it on my calendar." He's
Nice.
like, "Oh, shit."
Nice.
And then we get introduced.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about it. And I'm like, fuck, dude. Like, This is the man behind everything. So it's crazy how small the world is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how life kind of shakes things out for us. But yeah, I've known Shane a long, long time, almost 20 years. I'm dating myself again. But, me and Shane, that's actually a pretty funny story. Me and him met on Brookline Boulevard. There was a little MMA gym in the basement of a tanning salon. And I went there to
Makes
go.
sense for Shane.
Well, that's what's hilarious about it, because I'm like 18 years old. I'm literally going there to tan. And the owner of the gym was like, "Hey, don't you fight, blah, 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 blah." He's like, "I'll give you 3 months of free tanning if you could do a cage fight." I'd never done a cage fight before. I'm like, "Sure."
Similar principles.
Done.
Yeah.
Done. Okay. 3 months free tanning. What's that? $60? I'm like, do this amateur cage fight out in Ohio in a couple weeks. And that was my start into MMA. That was my first cage fight, was off of that premise. And that's how we got started. And Shane had been going to that gym. That's how we met. We were training together, and the story goes on.
So I did want to ask, because I wanted to ask earlier and it slipped me, but your judo training.
Yeah.
Do you use that for boxing? Like, oftentimes, obviously judo and MMA, sure. But do you feel the things you've learned in judo, body positioning, using your hips, and judo is very throw driven. What people don't realize with boxing is the clenches are taxing. They're taxing. And if you don't know how to navigate that, I dabbled in boxing. I will never say, and I also dabbled MMA. I did a few MMA fights, amateur. And it was something that I never thought of until I've seen my friends who do this professionally. And I'm like, oh, that looks a lot different when they do it. Yeah. Like, do you use judo principles in boxing? And if so, like, what does that look like?
100%. I use everything I've ever learned. All of it is just compiled experience, body positioning, leverage, especially from judo, is a huge one. One of the biggest principles in judo is your positioning and leverage, right? So where your hip placement is and different things like that. I think that anybody that's ever been in the ring with me, even just strictly boxing, not doing MMA training, would tell you that I'm pretty ignorant on the inside. It's not fun to be in there with me. I routinely push bigger guys around, and it's not just one-on-one brute strength, right? It's where I'm at, it's body positioning and leverage, and all of those tools that I learned through that judo training and others that have allowed me to have some of those advantages on the inside like that. For sure, I utilize that.
It's always interesting. Like, people always say, what's the dominant MMA training, or MMA, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like the best
discipline.
base.
Yeah. What's the best discipline? The best martial art? It's like the best one is the one that includes them all. Like,
yeah, and I think it's a common misconception for a lot of fighters, in my opinion, that say, wrestlers stand like this, boxers stand like that, taekwondo guys stand like this, and this is, how you should be, and that's why this doesn't work in this discipline and it does work in this one. In my opinion, the base and the fundamentals that are used properly are transferable across all disciplines. Okay. I believe that if your base is proper and you've been taught the right fundamentals and mechanics, you transcend across all of the disciplines. Okay. And what I mean by that is the stance for an appropriate wrestler is not all that different than a stance of an appropriate boxer. Might be small tweaks here and there, but the principles of shifting your weight, being on balance, moving into a position where you can strike and or defend yourself are universal. Okay. And this is something that we could break down one time when we don't have headphones and a microphone on. But I promise you that I have these kind of conversations in the gym daily, and we laugh about it because, you know, it's a misconception that, you know, you have to totally restart when you're doing MMA or when a MMA guy's coming to boxing or boxing's going to MMA. I think we've had some extreme examples of some crossover guys for entertainment purposes, but you'll notice that a lot of the guys that don't make those jumps are probably the ones that would be the best at it.
Interesting. So now you're a promoter, right? You're creating this
promoting
thing
again, yeah.
Yeah, again to bring back boxing. And I think boxing has done like when I was a kid, boxing was huge. We would watch boxing on Showtime, and it was a huge thing. And then it kind of took a decline. And then I feel like now it's making a comeback. What does this show, this event, this calendar of things, what does this mean for you? Like, where do you envision this in the next 5 years?
I envision this as a great platform for up-and-coming fighters to not only display their skills, but to have a consistent way in which, and almost a schedule of sorts, to build their resume and to build their records right here at home. I think that there's an audience here. I know there's an audience here. Pittsburgh was built on, you know, that blue collar, lunch pail kind of people.
Grit.
Right?
Just
Gritty. You know, it's like the insane love for the Steelers and football. If you really break that down, we've never been this like high flying shotgun offense, you know, or whatever. It was the defense. It was the smash mouth football. It was the hit you in the mouth kind of thing that the Steelers had for so long that made people love them so much, right? That's what they were known for. So I think that it's only natural that the city would get behind fighters, or especially likable fighters that they could relate to and who fought in a way that represented that smash mouth kind of style. So I think that put in the right context and boxed in an entertaining way, I think it's something that the city would really get behind. So that's what we're banking on.
And fighting in MMA, and it's making a huge appearance here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, and I talk to people all over the country, and I'm like, you know, fighters, jiu-jitsu practitioners. I'm like, you guys, like, you're sleeping on Pittsburgh. Like a lot of these events that don't happen here, I'm like, you guys you're sleeping on Pittsburgh.
Well, and Western PA in general, smooth, bro. Smooth.
Yeah, that's what she said.
The Western PA in general has always been like a hub of wrestling too. I mean, you know, it's famous for some of the caliber of wrestlers that have come through here. So, you know, as a natural progression, as MMA becomes more and more acceptable, MMA training is starting younger and younger and younger, and you know, boxing has been here. Whether people know it or not, Pittsburgh has had a pretty good crop of boxing, and I know through my years, I can think of a whole lot of fighters that we all would be talking about now that for one way or another didn't make it, whether it be falling into the streets, whether it be, you know, whatever that may look like, you know, didn't make it to the professional ranks in boxing. But I think that we'd be having a much different conversation if some of those guys did. So having some of these gyms or some of these outlets, having some of these resources like the Police Athletic League gyms and all these different things, you know, having people utilize them, you know, at a younger and younger age are going to keep some of these kids in these systems and are going to produce a crop of of fighters, both in MMA and boxing in the city for quite some time.
Oh, I'm excited for March 1st, man. I really am. I'm about to bring my little crew down there.
Yeah,
I like
there
to
you
travel and pack, so we're about to go over there, see what it's about. I love fighting. I love what it stands for, and especially here in Pittsburgh, I think good things are coming. I'd like to pivot. You started fighting at a young age. How does that translate to you getting into the entrepreneur world and becoming an attorney? Usually it's like blue collar and construction and like steel workers coming in after their shift. And how did you get into that realm of things? You started a business at age 15. Like how did that all come about?
So, again, going back to some of the things that we talked about earlier, that competitive side of me was certainly there at the beginning physically, and then it got there mentally and intellectually as I started getting a little older and kind of realizing some of my potential academically. So I graduated high school from Montour, and they had a program where you could take college level classes while you were still in high school. And I was already pretty young for my age. So my junior year of high school, I was 15 years old, and I was eligible for this program. So I started taking college classes at 15. And we had one specific class I took. It was called argumentation. And for the final of the class, you could elect, instead of taking the final or doing a class project, it was an open debate, right? And you were graded for your final on this debate with all the other kids in the class. And so I signed up for it. And then when I went to sign up for it, I realized like all the kids that are signed up for this are like the smartest kids in school, like, 4-point extra GPAs and all that stuff. So I actually took my name off. I signed up and then I unsigned up. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in homeroom a couple of days later, and the teacher, professor, I'm not sure the appropriate name since he was teaching a college course, but he came into my homeroom and he was like, look, man, you should really do this. Like, I really think you could win this whole thing. And I'm like, oh, no, there's all these kids that are way smarter than me are in there. And, I'm playing football and I'm trying to go do sports, whatever. And he's like, no, man, I really think you should do this. I think you have a real chance of winning this thing. I'm like, all right. So he pretty much talked me into it. And so I did it. Very long story short, I did win the entire thing. We had like the finals or whatever. We're like in the high school auditorium where everybody's there and they're pinging you with questions and you're debating and blah, 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 blah. I won all that. And then I got to go and compete as the winner of our school. I went to the University of Pittsburgh and competed against all the other schools. And I mopped them up. They didn't declare a winner, but they should have, because I mopped them up too, right? But
no contest.
Right?
No contest.
But that was my first time like, hold on a minute. Like, I never thought of myself as like the smart kid. I kind of fancied myself as the tough kid, right? I never fancied myself as the smart kid. I never put myself in that category. So that was the first time where I was like, oh, wow. Like, I could challenge myself in a different way, and I could be good at it. So that really got my gears turning. And then to kind of transfer that over to the entrepreneurial side of things, at that same time, I was 15 years old. They had this company, some people probably heard of it, like Cutco Kitchen Cutlery. Okay, the knives are actually pretty awesome. Okay,
I think, weren't they doing like a marketing thing where you can like sign on to sell these knives?
That was me, bro.
Okay.
That was me.
I almost signed up for that because I was in school for marketing.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, this is a good opportunity.
Well, so I was 15 and I'm looking, and like at that age, you can only get a job like washing dishes or like whatever. Well, it was actually Vector Marketing, which you'll probably remember.
Yeah.
They are who facilitate for Cutco. So Vector Marketing had this like open house of interviews where you could go and try to be a salesman for this company. And so I went and didn't say anything about my age. I just went in and like I'm suited up, and I'm doing my thing, and I interviewed, and they're like, yeah, you're going to be great at this, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like this whole thing because they didn't really realize I was so young and blah, blah, blah. Very long story short, they allowed me to do it, but you have to invest in yourself. It's your own 1099 business. You have to buy all the knives and all the sets, and you have to do all that. So I scrounged up my savings, and my parents were like, don't do it. It's a scam.
It's a scam if you're not successful in it.
It's a scam. They're making you pay to work for them. Get out of here. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's my own little business, and this is how I'm going to do it. So what's funny is, sorry to some of my high school friends that I got their moms to buy my knives, but I would go over to my friends' houses and they're like, oh man, let's play Xbox and let's get on this Madden game. And I'm like, yeah, get it all set up. Hey, where's your mom at? Like, I got to talk to her real quick, you know?
Shit.
and I'm in their kitchen cutting ropes and cutting through leather and selling kitchen sets and cutlery sets to my friends' moms at 15 years old.
You can be doing other things to your friends' moms. So that's
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I was a good guy.
But it goes to show you like some people's mindsets. Like, hey, let's go play Xbox. You're like, yeah, bet.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah, let me go make this.
Let me go make a couple $100 and then I'll be done.
Yeah, right. Hey, come here real quick. Let me talk to you, Miss Smith.
Pull out your best knife. Yeah. Let me show you something.
Like, hold on. What?
Yeah, right. Right, exactly.
Dude, that's awesome. And what has that grown into? So like what things are you into now? Like what businesses are you?
So I took a crazy turn, right? So from there, then I started getting into like sales, and most entrepreneurs in some way or another got into sales and kind of understood that was a good base for different things. So I went from selling cutlery to then I started selling appliances at Sears. I was selling like the washers and dryers and different things like that, and I was doing pretty well there. And then, like most Pittsburgh guys, I put on the hard hat and went the blue collar route. And I was in the Boilermakers Union for a couple of years. I was welding on power plants, and I took some crazy angles, right? And I got pretty good. I wouldn't say I was the best by any stretch of the imagination, but a couple years in, and I was at a foreman type. Some people would look to me to do some different things, and I was in some good crews and was getting good jobs and making good money, especially at that age. 18 years old, making Boilermaker rates. I was living pretty good, but I was like, this isn't really for me. This isn't enough. This is like not challenged enough. I don't have I have a clear ceiling, right? Once you are a journeyman and a foreman, et cetera, you know what you're going to make. You understand your rate. That idea wasn't great for me. So at that point, my boxing career was starting to do pretty good, and I was kind of sustainable-ish with my professional career. I was making enough to pay some bills and float around here or there. So I decided to go back to school and finish my degree. And the whole plan was to go to law school. And I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And then my boxing career started doing really good again. So I put law school on hold for 7 years. I had a 7-year gap in between my undergraduate and when I went to law school.
So you're saying you can still go to law school with that gap? I may have to change some opportunities here.
Yeah. So, you get your good GPA on your undergrad, do good on the LSAT, and get out there.
I know about the LSAT thanks to Suits.
Yeah, see that? Well, what's funny
I
about...
may just hack the system and put my name in there.
What's funny about the LSAT was, so I took the LSAT and kind of just like dismissed it. And it was right when it got like all computerized. So like after you took the LSAT and you input all your scores and everything, they make you do like this online portal. And you pick like what schools you want to apply to. So I did like Pitt, Duquesne, Pittsburgh schools, whatever. And then at the very bottom, just a real little box that's like, would you like to apply and send your scores to any school that doesn't require a payment to send it to? So why not, right? You click the box. A couple years later, like sitting around, I guess it wasn't a couple years, probably like a year later, I'm sitting around my house having a couple beverages, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And I had this letter from this school in California. And I opened it up, and it was like, we seen your scores, and we want to offer you a full ride scholarship for law school. And I had never even been to California at all for a vacation, for nothing. And literally the next day, I got on a flight, flew out there, signed a lease for an apartment, flew back, got my stuff, flew back out, and about a month after I got that letter, I was in law school.
Sometimes you just got to send it.
Send it.
There seems to be a theme, an ongoing theme here. Like, they just, fuck it.
Well, I'm a all or nothing guy, right? So that could be bad, okay, but it could be real good. You know, I'm not half stepping on anything I do. Okay, if I'm doing it, I'm doing it all the way. If I'm starting a business, I wanna be a disruptor in that market. If I'm fighting, I want to be the best. If I'm drinking, I want to be the best drinker. If I'm, you know what I mean? Like
that's my specialty.
Yeah, like if we're drinking all night. Okay, it's just why even start? Okay, don't get me all tuned up for nothing.
Dude,
okay, you know what I'm saying? Like it's all or nothing. I don't want to have one beer. I'm not interested. Okay,
my boys, like, they know they make a mistake when, like, dude, we getting after it today. And then when I send like a meme of like, they're like, oh no, like, but I do work tomorrow. I'm like, no. You started this train and I'm leading it. Like,
exactly.
We're going.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can understand that all or nothing mentality, because I do it too with everything I do, with everything. Yeah. So unfortunately, if it's casino night,
right,
that blackjack table's rocked.
Yeah,
that just happened the other day. Well, that's a story for another time. We're here to inspire.
Yeah, we digress.
Yeah, we're not digressing here. But so what challenges did you face trying to like law school? You're in the midst of your boxing career. Like, what were some things you had to give on anything, or did you pursue both?
So I had to give a little bit in just a training sense, but then I did find a good gym and some good trainers out in California. But it was tough. You know, me and my girlfriend at the time, we were together for many years, but we weren't married yet. And we had just built a place in Pittsburgh, right? Like we had just like kind of had our nice spot, and I'm just like dipping out for a year. And so that was stressful, as you might imagine. It wasn't like the best news for her that like,
she's like, what?
Yeah, you're going where? Why? How? Like, what? There's schools in Pittsburgh. What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Full ride though.
But so, you know, it was challenging in a lot of ways, but it was good. Like everything happens for a reason, because when I went out there, especially for the first couple months, I knew nobody. I had nothing. Like, so I was just like living in the law library. Like I crushed it out there. You know what I mean? I was like I was vying for like the top spot in my class, which, you know, lawyers or law students understand your 1L year is super important, and you're on a bell curve. So you are literally competing against each other. Like, you know, they tell you who's top in the class and et cetera and so forth. So, and then you go and you get your internships off of those academic for your position. So because of all of that, I earned a internship here at the federal courthouse, and I interned with the judge after my first year in law school, and it was actually a conversation with him that got me back to Pittsburgh, because he was like, look, you know, where do you see yourself practicing? What do you want to do? Do you plan on moving back to Pittsburgh? When I told him my plan was to come back to Pittsburgh, he said, look, man, you should probably consider transferring, going to school here in Pittsburgh, either Pitt or Duquesne. You know, you'll network, you'll be easier to get a job, different things like that. So I did. After that first year, I transferred and ended up finishing up at Pitt.
Back home.
Steel
City.
Can't avoid Pittsburgh to save my life.
Dude,
I got out a couple times. I keep coming back.
Pittsburgh is interesting in that way. Like, I grew up in Erie. Came to Pittsburgh handful
sorry
of times.
to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. And I came a handful of times, and every time I'd come, I'm like, dude, Pittsburgh is crazy. Like, it's a huge city. There's so much to all. And then I moved down here, and I'm like, dude, this ain't that big of a city.
Right.
Like, everyone kind of knows everyone. Like,
yeah. We think we're a big city. We're not.
Yeah, exactly. The network is important here.
Oh, yeah.
You know, through this podcast, a majority of the guests I've met through network.
Yeah, I believe it.
You know, like, I met you through network. Mm-hmm. You know, and then what's funny is after I start combing your shit, I'm like, oh, I've heard of this dude. I've seen this dude. Mm-hmm. But I would have never been introduced to this dude if it wasn't for the network. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, I'm supposed to have Dave Allen on here.
Yeah.
Met his assistant through a network.
Yeah.
And it's just funny how everything like comes, and then half the people on the show have been to one of his shows.
Yeah. I was at his show, and guess what? I'm going to have his suit on. We just got a dope suit made for this fight March 1st. So shout out to David Allen, because I got to wait till you see this thing.
All right, now you can't avoid me, David. Now you can't avoid me. See how I just manifested that in there? You can't avoid me. I got to email you again.
He's cool people, man. I'm sure he'll do it.
Dude, he said he's all, they said he likes to likes to talk about stuff, and I like to talk about stuff. So, no, that's cool. How do you manage now that you're in this both worlds? Like, how do you, quote unquote? I know I talk about balance on the show a lot. I personally don't believe in balance as people see it. Like, oh, you have to have a perfect balance of everything has 20. If you're doing 4 things, 25% of everything. Like, it's like balance to me is what's your priority at the time.
Has to be.
And having a core friend group and a core family group that understands that and it's not going to pull from that. Like, that's where balance is to me. Like, if your family's on board with, they know, like me, they like my friends know when I'm doing something, I'm doing it. You know, they're like, oh, let's go grab beers. There could be a time where I commit to that. Mm-hmm. And then boom, last minute I'm segueing because I have a meeting or I have a house showing or I have a podcast episode that just popped up. Like, and they're like, all right, bet. Like we understand, you know, but if you're surrounded by people who are like, oh damn, bro, really? Like right. That can take away from what you're trying to do. So how do you balance what you're doing? Cause you have successful attorney career, entrepreneur, successful boxing career. Like, how do you balance that?
It's tough. I won't lie to you. So I have a lot of recurring businesses that are clients as it relates to my attorney world. I have a couple businesses as well on the side of a construction development company. I have a solar company, and they've been ripping and raring this last 12, 14 months. I'm back in the gym. I have a young son. So I think to answer your question, step one is get you a dope-ass wife, okay? My wife helps me a lot. Get you a dope-ass wife. Yeah, seriously, though, because, listen, for me, the reality is for me to be able to do all the things that I need to do to be successful, I need to make sure that the household's taken care of, that my son's taken care of, that, everything's in order. And it's important to give me, for me to have that freedom to go do what I need to do, is important to have that stability at home. It's unbelievably important. It's integral to what I'm doing. So that's number one. Number two is kind of, it's hard for me to say organization and management because my brain is like a tornado, brother. I'm telling you, I got a million things going on. I got ideas over here. I got to like nail a lot of that down. But in some senses, I liked what you said about prioritizing what needs done today. Okay, I got all the big goals mapped out, right? What has to get done today to keep this thing moving forward? And so making sure all those boxes get checked. And then another thing that I like to do is I have what I call transformative days and transactional days. So there's days where I will literally do all the paperwork, do all the dirty work, do all the actual like transaction invoices, the things that need to get done that are a little mundane or maybe don't require some like insanely transformative thought process, right? But they still need to get done to get you where you need to go. And then I have days where I really will just wander. I'll walk around, or me and my wife, we lived in Florida for a couple of years, and I would just go in the pool. She's like, "What are you doing? Are you working?" I'm like, "I'm solving like 7 problems right now. Give me a minute."
While floating in the sun.
Literally.
Sun is important.
But I'm coming out of there. I'm really like, sometimes I like to just move or do whatever and do something mindless to get my wheels turning a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, hold on a minute. Give me my notepad. I got it figured out. So I like to like separate and segregate days where that's all I'm doing is like plotting how am I taking over the world, right? Like that's what today is, just going to be a thought day. And then tomorrow I'm like, all right, I got 10 hours of typing away, but I mix those in so that I can make some big decisions on the grand scheme of things, and then also have days where we're just getting things done.
Never heard that. That's actually very beneficial because I try to like mix both of those days, right? Like I'll be working on stuff while I'm trying to think of taking over the world, and that those can take away from each other. No,
listen, it's not always clean. Right, there could be things popped up. I might be having a transformative day where I'm really trying to map things out and have it be in deep thought, and my phone's blowing up because, somebody had an emergency on a job or there's an issue or, that happens, of course, right? We try to minimize that as much as possible and insulate that or insulate me during those times. So there's proper channels where those problems should get solved before they get to me, right? That in a perfect world, that's how it happens, but we all know, or anybody that's a business owner knows, a lot of times it's you cleaning up the messes. So, I'm not unfamiliar.
Not to say like especially people who do a lot. There's no typical days.
Agreed.
But what's a typical day in Bill's world? Like, how does that look from when you wake up to when you go to sleep?
So a typical day, I can just run through, even just like yesterday, get up early, go to the gym. I like to do a lot of cardio in the morning, and like that's good for me to clear my head. Like I get the headphones on, doing my thing, and that's a good like cleansing for me. Sweat it out, really get in my head a little bit, and then I get home. I'm usually home like right on time to like pull my son out of bed, which is like my favorite part of the day. He gets super pumped whenever he like you open that door and he's like, it's like I try not to miss that point. And then I have like a couple hours where I'll like really try to like get on the laptop or get into my office where I have a couple screens and just get to work. Try to schedule as much as I can ahead of time so that I can be as efficient as I can. And then at that point, it's usually what's pinging on the day, right? Like, is it an issue or is it we need to take a look at this, insurance needs up for this certain project, or, whatever the case may be, and kind of floating from that point. But I really try my best to organize as much as I can, almost every hour on the hour, to kind of divvy that up. And then for other days where maybe I don't have so much, we get into that kind of transformative type of day.
What's the future looking like for you? Where do you see yourself, Bill, in the next 5 years with everything you're doing?
I see myself with a lot of freedom of my time. So one of the things I told my wife a couple years ago now is I really want to be there for hopefully multiple children. If she's listening, I want 4 boys, but whatever.
That's a clue.
Put that in there, right? But I really want to be there for everything. I want to be there at the practice. I want to be there for the games. I want to be there for all that stuff. So right now, I'm just in like this insane grind mode where I just want to set things up and set things in motion to where I can just manage, and I can work from Wi-Fi, right? I want to be able to work from my phone, work from my computer, wherever I am. If I'm in Florida, if I'm in Pennsylvania, if I'm wherever I could be, I can work from my devices. So I can be physically where I want to be at that time. And that's super important to me. So, growing up, my parents and my family were at a lot of my games and different things like that. So that's really important to me. And I personally want to be at all of those events.
Time is the true currency. Like,
it is.
Like, a lot of times we transfer time for hours, or time for money, for hours, time for money. And I feel like that's where a lot of people struggle. It's because we don't have the freedom to do what the real things we want to do.
Well, and to that end, I struggled with this a lot up until recently. I tried to do everything. Okay? And now I got to the point where I've almost like, in a weird way, I've almost like put a dollar amount to my time, to my hour, if you will. And if it's not to X amount of importance, I'm subbing it out, right? Someone else is doing it. Someone else is taking care of it. And I have to be okay delegating that. If not, I'm just going to go crazy, but it took me a long time to get to that point. I always say, I've never asked anybody that has worked with me or for me, however you want to look at it. I've never asked anyone to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And I've proven that a lot, too much. Okay. And it's hard for me to get out of that mindset. Sometimes I still struggle with that, but I've had to learn, in my own professional career, I've had to learn to let that go a little bit and to delegate a little better. I still struggle with it, but
I feel like that's where I'm at right now. I'm holding all my baskets, and I'm like, I can't let these go because they need to be a certain way. And it's tough because it used to take me like 7 hours to edit a podcast. Mm-hmm. Like now there's other tools. There's tools available to help with that. But like eventually, like people don't believe I do it. Like I'll do this all by myself. All the graphics, all the editing, the everything I do myself because I'm like, I want it to be a certain way. I want it to, it's my baby. It's my thing. So I want it to be perfect. But sometimes we have to let go of something if we want it to fully flourish.
Well, it's really hard too when you have a business that in any market category that is in a growth phase, right? It's gonna come to a point where you have to let go enough to let it grow, right? You can't be everywhere at once. You're only one person, right? And it's hard because then you also have a reputation to keep, right? So you feel like if I let this part go or I delegate this, what if it's not as good as I would have done it? Or a lot of times it can't be as good because I'm the creator of this. I'm the artist of this. You are the guy on the podcast, right? So it's hard no one's going to know where you're trying to go with this better than you. So I can see how you could struggle with that.
Let go to let it grow. And I feel if you can communicate your goal, your objective to where you're trying to go effectively with a good team, that's where that growth comes in.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the evolution for you, is finding ways to effectively and efficiently communicate your goals and where you want things to go so that you can delegate a little more than you are now.
Shit. That's
I'll send you an invoice after the show.
Hey, on the podcast, it's invoiceless. This we're helping people. What message? I like to ask this question at the end. People are listening to this podcast in their cars, at the gym, wherever they're at. The podcast is over. Bill goes home. Gym session's done. What message do you wish people to take with them after this podcast is done? They've listened to it. What message do you hope that they can grab from this?
I think that we've covered a lot. To be frank, we've covered a lot, which I hope is beneficial even in a small way to anybody out there. But I would say, we actually said the word earlier, which is interesting, is like delusional, right? That delusional self-belief is such a powerful thing. Like if you really want it that bad, anything, I don't care what it is. If you really want it that bad and you believe in yourself, you can find different ways to get it done. And I'm trying my best not to be like a corny motivational speaker right now, but
I'm all about corny motivation, dude.
But I'm serious. Like if I personally certainly would not have had any of the small little successes that I've had in my life if I didn't flick off everybody else in the world and say, I know I can do this. I'm sure there's been a million people out there that probably still laugh at me and, he can't do this or he can't do that, or, what's he even trying to do over there? Don't even make sense. Whatever. Doubters or different people, anybody, that hates on me or hates on you or hates on whoever, you have to have that ability to block that out and just say, you know what? I don't care. I believe in myself. And then when they see the product, then all of a sudden everybody believes. It's easy then, right? But right now, you have to believe in yourself. Even if it's delusional or it seems to the outside world delusional, you have to believe in yourself.
I believe what you think will become.
Yep.
What you think will become true. If you think you're not good enough, you're not fit enough, it's going to become true. It's going to become true.
Well, and to that end, I'm a firm believer in positive vibes too. I tell my wife, I tell my friends all the time, I don't even let that negative talk around me. I'll shut up. Don't say that. Don't say can't. Don't say these things because it starts to infiltrate, and I'm not trying to get down some weirdo path here, but it's true. If you allow that in, it's a thought that comes through. You have to stay positive. You have to truly and genuinely believe it. It's not I'm not faking the funk. I genuinely believe in myself. You have to have that, and it has to be real. And once you can do that, it'll be translatable into all the different areas of your life.
I think it's corny motivation because we hear this a lot, right? But the thing is, we don't apply it a lot, right? Because I've been reading books, listening to podcasts. More recently, I've never been a podcast guy, but I've been listening to a lot, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I've heard this. But it wasn't until a year, maybe a year and a half, that I've started to truly apply even the smallest of things, like get sunlight, right? We hear that all the time. Sunlight's beneficial for you. Get sunlight. Yeah, okay, I've heard that, but we don't do it.
Right.
Or speak positivity. In the mirror, tell yourself 3 things you like about yourself. Oh, that's corny. No, we don't do it.
Right.
But when you start to do it every day, you're relentless in these little things, changes start to occur. How I think, how I move, how I approach people. Like back in the day, if you said something I didn't like, I'd pop off.
Yeah.
But it's like, recently I've been reading what it was like, that's a sign of weakness. A man who can't control his attitude, his temper, that's weakness.
I agree with that.
Like someone approaches you to just be like, hey, I didn't appreciate that. I won't allow you to speak to me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you go your way.
Yeah.
That is like strength. So I started applying stuff like that. And slowly, some people have been falling off, haven't heard from certain people. When you start to create these boundaries, when you start to respect yourself.
Yeah. And you create, in just in what you just said there, you create the environment or the atmosphere that you're in. Again, talking about positive vibes and not letting that negativity around you. If I walked in here and I was like, Ish, I got this fight coming up and I'm gonna try my best, and you're like, dude, what's going on here? But if I come in here and I'm like, listen, I got this fight coming up March 1st. I'm ready to go. Like I am seriously like bursting at the seams because I'm gonna make this happen. I'm creating a different environment here. I'm putting off a different energy that you are going to gravitate towards, as opposed to like, man, nothing's going to happen for that guy. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's contagious.
Like,
Energy is contagious.
It's super important. It's really important. Even within yourself and how you talk to yourself. It's so important.
Well, you notice like certain people, how they move, right? And then when they start talking, you're like, oh my gosh, why are you thinking like that?
Yeah.
And because it's contagious. If you put yourself down, you're going to walk around like a beaten dog.
Mm-hmm.
If you put yourself up, you're going to walk around with your head up. You're going to walk around with your shoulders back. You move different. When you move different, you think different. When you think different, different things start to happen.
Yeah, and you're leaving yourself open for the opportunities, right? You're able to receive the opportunities out there. You're open for business, right? As opposed to just being so closed off and it's never going to happen for me. And no, I can't, I won't, no, I'm here for it. Bring it on.
Surround yourself with what you want to be. What's the saying? If you're in a room with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th. If you're in a room with 5 alcoholics, you'll be the 6th.
Yep.
Like whatever environment you allow yourself to be in, you will be consumed by.
Yep.
Which is why, like, I always, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because I put myself in these rooms with people who are a lot more successful than me. Mm-hmm. Right? That's where you want to be. Right?
Sure.
You want to feed off this energy and contribute and then be a part of this environment. But then in that same token, you're like, man, I'm not as good enough as these guys. I'm not, I don't box as well. I don't grapple as well. I don't make as much money. I don't have, they have 5 businesses that are successful. I don't have one that's successful. I'm building that. We start to like negative talk. But if you can put yourself in these rooms and then be like, this is where I belong. This is like, I know I'm not there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yep.
And you frame that in your mind. I always say frame. You frame your mindset. You're going to become that person. And then there's going to be another person in that room feeling that way about you. And now it's your responsibility to go, no, don't talk like that. You're here because you're supposed to be.
Yeah. I love being the dumbest guy in the room. Seriously, I genuinely mean that, because I'm going to learn something. I'm going to take something from it. Trust me. And, I just had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman I do business with. I can't get into the exact specifics, but the message of the conversation was we were interviewing someone for a project that we're going to subcontract out. And I literally said to him, I can't wait to go meet with this gentleman because I'm going to ask him questions. And if he doesn't teach me something, I'm not hiring him because that's not my area of expertise. I'm coming in here prepped with my questions and I want to learn something. And if I don't, then he's not the guy for me. Right. And you got to have that mindset to get anywhere.
No, that's true. I'm not going to hire you to do something I can do.
Right.
Like it's simple.
It seems simple,
it's corny,
but it's, right? Yeah, right.
Like, it's true. If you're the smartest dude in the room or smartest person in the room, you need a different room. You've outgrown that room.
Yep.
And that's nothing against the people in that room, but it's like, hopefully everyone's applying that same mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're not the smartest person in the room, get there and then grow.
For sure.
Yeah. Good stuff. Where can people follow you? They're like, man, I really like what he's doing. I like his vibe. He's got a fight coming up. I want to support that fight. Like, where can people follow you online? And
Absolutely, thank you. So on Instagram, I'm at official Bill Hutchinson, and then my website hutchlawoffices.com. And from those 2 points, you can pretty much find everything that you need to know about me. So
hopefully that's good stuff.
And all the good, and all the best ways.
He does fight
in all the best ways.
Official, okay, yeah, and I'll tag all that at the end.
Yeah, official Bill Hutchinson and hutchlawoffices.com.
Well, bro, I appreciate you for jumping on. This is the one with Bill Hutchinson. Bill Hutch,
Yeah.
William.
All of them. Yeah, I answer to them all.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Hey, call me, just don't call me late for dinner.
Right? Exactly.
Well, bro, I appreciate you jumping on, and we're out. Later.
Appreciate you, brother.